This is chapter 8, and the chapter is entitled Love. And let me go to the next slide here. My slides are very plain, so short and sweet. Um, from the introduction, I was just seeing how they make a distinction between the worldly love versus God's love. And I think one of the things on the worldly love is, and you hear this lots of times where people say they fell in love. And then as time goes on, and you've been together some time, and then people tend to feel that they grow distance, and they say, oh, I've fallen out of love. And uh, and I think that's one of the things we see a lot in society today. um, I think as Christians we need to recognize that love it's also a commitment, and you're making a commitment to that other person. And it reminded me of some um, discussion that I heard on the radio, where it was a scenario that a husband just said, "Well, I fell out of love," and the pastor was advising him and saying, "Well, what you need to do is love her. Do loving things for her, and you will see that you love her. That'll it's kind of like that whole saying where they say, if you smile, you will feel happier." Um, and so I think there's a lot of truth there as well. We should love our wives, and that's not a feeling. It's a commitment. It's something that we should practice. And then there's verses that say that we should love our wives as Christ loves the church. And so I'm going to go over a couple of slides that talk about worldly love, what that looks like, and I'm sure all of us can recognize that. And so one of the things that they talked about was the romantic feelings. So with time, those romantic feelings kind of can come and go. And I'm not sure who. I was kind of curious on who we have here, how long people have been married for. Um, so maybe we can just go around and ask a bit. Louis, how long were you married for? Have been married for?
I got to think about this. I think we got married in 2002. So
Mm.
somebody do math. 19 years, 18 years, 19 years this year.
Yeah, I think 19 years, because that's the same time we got married. So
Yeah, it was the same year you guys
yeah,
got married.
yeah, 19. I was just add 1 year to Karina, and so that's about where it's at. And Vince, you've been married.
Been married just about almost 3.5 years.
Wow, damn, that was fast.
Yeah, it goes very fast, but I guess we're still kind of new to the marriage life right now.
And how about you, Zach?
This will be year 5, so we've been married a little over 4 years.
Wow, that's great. That's great. How about you, Christopher? 5 years. All right. And Stefan, you're in preparation, or learning the tricks. But yeah, I mean, I've been married the same amount of time as Louis, just pretty much 19 years, and I definitely feel that I'm wiser as to knowing the types of things that I should be doing. So romantic feelings, I think that's very true. That people, especially in the worldly view, it's all romance. You see this in the movies, and so people tend to think it's just a romantic feeling. Um, Physical attraction. Again, physical attraction is desire or passion for that other person, how they look. Um, there was a couple of Bible verses that they referenced. I did want to read one of 1 Samuel 16:7, which basically is talking about God looks at the heart. Um, it it kind of reminds me of that not a very good movie in the sense, but the Shallow Hal. Remember Shallow Hal, where he kind of sees the good of people and kind of sees people differently once. And it'd be nice if we could do that with people instead of just um, looking at the cover in a sense. But let me go ahead and pull that up 1 second here. So this is 1 Samuel 16:7. And okay. It says, but the Lord said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at things people look at. People look at outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And I'm sure I could probably speak for the men that are at this session here, and that for my wife, I definitely feel blessed with her, and I think sometimes when we shouldn't. When I look at the world out there and I see some of the stuff that's going on, I just always think, oh, thank God, that I have the wife I have. I'm very thankful for her. One of the other things that the worldly view of love is sex. So fulfilling sexual desires is, especially I think for men, is probably something that they describe as love. And I think a lot of these components are definitely important. But if you're solely relying on them, of course, I think that's where you have problems. Let's see here. So I liked what they said on Ephesians. 1 second, let me read this one here on sex. Ephesians 5:2-3. Look at that. And walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. So I think one of the, and we should probably always do this, I would say, is we should be living for God. Everything we do should be for God, for his glory, where we work at. Well, everything you do, I think we should try to please God. And there's no difference here in marriage as well. Needing. A person may feel that they cannot live with another person. That's not really love. That shouldn't be a definition of love. And that could result in a lot of problems, and it does in marriages, as I'm sure a lot of us have witnessed, like battered women that they need that person. They stay with them because they feel like they need that person to live. Benefiting is the same thing, where maybe the husband is a good provider and they just marry because they're a good provider. That's not love. And loving words alone. I always like to think of this kind of like talk is cheap. And again, I think loving words, and this chapter talks about it. It is an important component because, as I'm sure many of us probably have recognized, the way women interpret love and the way we see love, and all of us have different ways of how would you say, surfacing or what we consider to be love. So one of the things I know in my relationship with Arlene, Arlene is more about using words and saying words. And in my family, the way we grew up, we never really said to each other that we love each other. For us, it was all about actions, and it was all about what we did and how we did and what we sacrificed. And that's the way we expressed our love. That's kind of the word I was looking for. Different ways of people express love. So for me, words to me was always kind of like cheap to me, because I just, the people I knew that said things like that, they really didn't mean it. And I don't know, I just never really respected the talk part of it. But I think when you're married, it's important to have both of those. And that's what this chapter talks about. And this is why he makes a distinction here where it says loving words alone and loving actions alone. You got to have both of those components. Well, in addition to other components in your marriage. And that is what this chapter is talking about. Being in love, again, it's this kind of romanticized ideal of, I just fell out of love. We're not in love anymore. And I think people that feel that way, of course you're going to have a lot of divorce rates. And it's a commitment, and I'm sure everybody on this call knows, you got to work towards your marriage. You got to work towards your marriage. You got to keep it interesting. You got to keep that commitment, and you got to love your spouse. So let's see. So that brings us over. So that's the world's view of love. And God's love, here we have, is initiated first by himself. So there's God first loved us, and is enduring, that's going to go on forever, and is verbalized. And so I'm not going to read all these passages here, but I would definitely suggest that we read them. Is compassionate, and is demonstrated by action. Does what is best for us, is self-sacrificing, involves treasuring us even though we are not worthy, and is not based on performance. So I could say being married, I can kind of see where there isn't so much of there probably is an expectation that I would have when I would do things for Arlene. And I think there really shouldn't be. If we look at what God has, all the times that we have messed up, and God still takes us back, and we continue to screw up, and he still takes us back. And I think we need to have that kind of attitude and show that attitude with our wife. And some of the things that the chapter documented was really, I could see where that would be difficult, I think, for us as men to have that different perspective. But I thought it was really interesting how it talked about some of these perspectives, and I was going to share some of these as we go on. So God's kind of love, expressing God's love, and how we should express our love towards our wife. I thought this was a really good definition of a selfless and enduring commitment of the will to care about and benefit another person by righteousness, truthfulness, compassionate thoughts, words, and actions. I think it is definitely important for us to always recognize that our wives has our best needs in mind. And sometimes that could be hard to do because they may be thinking of it as a different way than what we would think about it. So communication is key, but I think not only in marriage, but in our lives, I think we should always give each other the benefit of the doubt and try not to go to the worst conclusion. And again, I mentioned earlier that the chapter talked about for the glory of God. I would say our marriages should be lived out that way, in addition to everything we do in the world. Hindrances to love. So they spoke about some of these hindrances, which was pride, fear, bitterness, and preoccupation. And I think we can probably all identify with all of those. And before I go on to that section, I did want to read some of these because I thought they were pretty interesting, the way they talk about how we should see things. Psalms 139:24, and see if there be any harmful way in me, and lead me in everlasting way. And so I think examining ourselves, always trying to do right by the other person. And so if I'm on page 109, they had a table there where it has wrong and right. And on the wrong, it had a list here where it says to serve self, to feel good about self, and to get love or favors. And that's the wrong attitude. And on the right side, it has to show God's love, to God's kind of love with no goal or personal benefit, to glorify and bless God. And I think that summarizes it. In the book, they go down and they're talking about pride, and I'll just give some examples of it. So they have two columns on page 109, and they have proud thoughts to put off, and then they have loving thoughts to put off. And So, as an example, a self-focused would be why doesn't she think of me more? Why isn't she doing X for me? And what they're suggesting is we should be thinking, how can I think of her now? What can I do for her? And a selfish one again that they had on here was, I will do this if she will do X. And instead of thinking of it that way, they're suggesting, I'm going to do this just to bless her and for you, Lord. And again, I think that's the right attitude. Um, Although I definitely would fall short of that because I can see a tit for tat throughout my marriage life. I'm curious about how you guys may feel about that. And actually, at this point, I kind of would like to ask you guys uh, to, if you have any comments on that, or what have your experiences been with that? I mean, do you find yourself doing stuff only for her and not thinking about yourself when you're doing things for her? Zach, you wanna chime in?
I think it's a pitfall at times that you can fall into. I hope that I don't do things out of I don't want to say negative, out of the wrong purposes in my heart, but I think, yeah, I think you can fall in it. I actually think it goes the other way for me more than the positive way. It's almost like, well, if this is how you're going to be, then I'm just going to be this way. And
Right,
it turns into it's almost like a one-upsmanship in the negative instead of the positive. So yeah, definitely have experienced that.
Yep, yep. How about you, Louis?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking through it, and I think when we first get married, right? And this is not usually a big deal because it's like we're all lovey-dovey and really excited, and everything seems to be going good. But I think after maybe a few years of marriage, this kind of mindset kind of sets in where it's like, uh, kind of like what Zach said. Well, you didn't do this for me, so I'm not going to do that for you. Or
Mhm.
you didn't appreciate this thing I did, so why should I do that thing? Or
Right.
there becomes a lot of, marriage gets difficult, kind of dealing with life, and then having to deal with the strains of uh, two different people living under the same roof and working through jobs and all this stuff. So, uh, I've found that for a little while in our marriage, we were uh, kind of judging everything and then basing our actions on those judgments.
Mhm.
Um, but I think since then, I want to say marriage gets easier, but you fall in a good routine where you understand that everybody has bad days, and especially I guess when you have a family, like you still got to pick up the slack, you still got to love, you still got to do things, you still got to make your household run. And uh, I hate to compare a marriage to a job, but in some ways they're similar. That there's a minimal amount of effort that's required, right? Uh, like you shouldn't have to ask me to wash the dishes every day. It's just something that I should have to do, not because I'm trying to get praise for her, not because I'm trying to show her love, but it's my effort into the marriage. It's kind of a terrible example, but I think you're trying to get my drift where
Yep.
at some point we just do the things we do because it's our marriage and it's the thing we're investing our time into. Does that make sense?
Yep. Does make sense. Does make sense. Um, Christopher, I know your mic's a little off there, but I'll ask Vince what your thoughts on it are.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. With what Louis and Zach, said. I think, first sometimes maybe like we can have those times we fall in that trap. Like, whoa, why don't you do this for me, or why don't you think of me here? But eventually, I think we learn that like for the benefit of our wife, and that we have to just do things to help out. Like oh hey, like I'm gonna go trash this store. Let me just take it out without her asking, like Ray mentioned. Or hey, like I know she had a hard day at work, so maybe I should do the dishes today, or I can cook tonight, just stuff like that. Because even then, I know Lauren's done that for me without me even asking. So for me, if I'm to love her as a godly man, I feel the only right thing to do is for me to reciprocate that love,
Yeah.
without her needing to tell me or anything like that. So yeah, um, I would agree with what's already been said.
So I mean, if we've read all these, I'm curious, even Stefan. I mean, when you see this, does it seem a bit extreme in your perspective here, as I view this thing? I have this little joke that I'd always say to Arlene, which really is the opposite way. I would say, Arlene, before you do anything, I want you to think, how is this going to affect Javier? What is Javier going to think about that? And it's this little thing I would kid around with her. But really, it's the other way around. I'm always thinking, okay, what is Arlene going to think about this? How is this going to impact Arlene? And I feel when I read this text, that's kind of, you're really focused on pleasing your spouse, and you're selfishly, with no consideration for yourself, I would say. So I'm kind of curious, what are you looking at that? I mean, what do you think about that?
Just looking at like the hindrances to love or um, things like that. Basically, I think that's a lot just to do, not just love, but almost in any relationship that you think are you getting yourself into, whether it's friendship, boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever. Like, there's a lot of hindrances that are going to come along, definitely from that, and pride, fear, preoccupation.
Mhm.
You're
Yeah.
gonna Things are gonna fall by the wayside. Somebody gets too prideful or hurt, like it's just good common sense for any relationship that you have, whether you're a boss, coworker, or brother, sister. Like those four traps you can definitely fall into,
Yeah.
which not only hindering to husband and wife, but just to think in the back of your mind of just like how just how you treat others, really. I mean, like with me, I have roommates. Those roommates, that's a relational agreement that we have, and we take care of the things that we need to in the house that we have to. And if somebody's falling short, we have to call them out on it. Not to be mean about it, but to make sure that things get done and
Yeah.
it's fair to everybody else. And in any relationship, that's going to happen. So it's just having the tact and everything to do it without being a jerk, basically.
Well, it's funny the word fair that you used, uh, because I feel on here we're really asking, we're, to not think of it as fair, not think of it as, well, if I this is not fair. I'm doing all this stuff and she's not doing this. It's kind of almost saying, you just keep doing all that stuff and don't worry about fair. Don't worry about trying to, because you're doing this to the glory of God. You're So I just thought it was when I read this, I think it's so interesting how it's, well, let me go on to the next page where it's really talking about just showing selfishly, just really looking to to help her. And one of the things I've always done, that I remember Pastor Butch, when he was here as a pastor, he had recommended, and this was early when I was married. He had recommended uh, always putting gas in your wife's car, and I always thought that was such a cool thing. And so, I've been doing that with Arlene from now and time to time. Sometimes I don't do it, I don't get around to it, but I try to make it something where it's just so much. Wouldn't that be nice if you could just get in your car and never have to worry about putting gas? And that's something I've tried to do for her. Um, and I'm pretty successful most of the time. But when he said that, I thought, that's really cool that I could do that for my wife, where she doesn't have to worry about any of that stuff. She just jumps in a car and goes off. And so I would suggest to you guys, if you guys could do something like that, I think they would appreciate that, and I think you'll feel good about it too. And and it's a nice thing. I mean, I wish somebody would do that for me sometimes, but that's all right. Um, okay, so I will go back here to, so now he talks about, how to love your wife. So again, we see this theme of really focusing on your spouse. So prefer her over yourself. Show interest in her interests and encourage her with words of appreciation. Brighten her day with unexpected card, note, flowers, or gift. Spend time with her, having fun. Spend time listening with interest to her concerns while showing compassion. Um, that one could be a hard one for me because sometimes I'm a bottom line kind of guy. So when she tells me stories, I'm always looking to try to find a solution or try to see what the problem is. When really there isn't a problem there, she just wants you to listen to what she has to say. And so I don't know if you guys suffer with that. If you guys have some kind of engineering type background, I think definitely you would suffer from that. I think, and help her when she looks as if she needs it. And that's an important one where don't wait for her to ask you. We need to be ready to help her out. Do shivers things for her like opening the door. This when I was reading this, boy, I've really failed this one. When I was dating Arlene, I always opened the door, the car door, and I've noticed that I don't open the car door for her. I open the regular doors, and I always walk on the side of traffic. I do those types of things. But why don't I do the door? I was just thinking to myself, gosh, what happened? How did I get away from that? And so little things like that to show you care. Show her non-sexual affection. Um, Seek to please and satisfy her during sexual intimacy. Confront her sin in love, and pray with her. And again, I think all those are important things that we should do to show that we love our wife. Um, I was going to ask, there was a time that I was listening to something on the radio that was talking about doing stuff for your wife, and I did one time. I did that for Arlene. When she came in, I had all these rose petals going up to our room and a nice bath drawn for her and our wedding song playing, and she just loved that. And so I think those kinds of things are just great to do for them, and they appreciate it. Um, Whoops. Hang on a second here. I seem to have pushed the wrong button. Oh, I'm sorry. I must have deleted the last part there. Maybe I didn't save. Oh no, I think that was the end of my slide. Yeah, yeah, that was the end of my slide. Sorry, guys. So in the end, the book kind of asks us to try to see how we measure up to these to these different bullet items here that are shown, and I definitely think it was useful to just kind of look at it and try to understand what areas for me that I definitely need to work in. It's interesting. I was talking to Arlene about this as well, and I was saying that I was a little taken aback by how much it's just focused on the other spouse, and I definitely feel there still needs to be communication. Like there's things that men, that as husbands, we would want our spouse expect from her to do certain things, and I think we do need to communicate and talk with them and kind of have an understanding of stuff. I feel the chapter didn't talk too much about getting into that piece of it, but I do feel like there's always got to be that open communication, and I don't think it's from a necessarily a selfish place. I think it's from a place of trying to make a good marriage, and so did you guys feel? I mean, I felt it was very selfless, like even more than I would have expected, I would say. But I'm curious, did you guys at all get that feeling, or am I the only one that felt that way? Anybody want to jump in? Put you guys on the spot here. Zach, you look like you want to say something.
Can't even see me. um, no, yeah, I mean, I would agree. It's it was a it's a tough one to reflect on for me personally, for sure. So seems to always be a good lesson in this that hits right to home.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, is it fair to say that most of you guys felt that way, or were you guys just nodding your head like, yeah, that's right, that's what you got to do?
Well, I'll say that what you said before. You're talking about thinking about uh, comparing and judging and stuff, right? And you're going through the lesson, you're reading all this stuff, and I had the same thought you're talking about, Javier. It's like, well, this is all like about the man. What about the woman? Where's all her stuff
Right,
at?
right,
And I found myself even having that thought, right? And it's
right.
like, no, that's not what this is about. This is about us, not them. Uh, but that just shows the inherent difficulty it is, where we want to blame.
Mhm.
Uh, oh, it's not my fault, it's this, or if this would happen, then that, or if she would do this, then I'd do this.
Right.
And we're just so wired that way. Yeah, just even reading through this lesson, I caught myself in like having that thought. Well, this would be better if. Like, no, that's not. The
Right.
lesson's telling you the exact opposite of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can't help but see this. I feel, wow, what a pushover, you know. But we got to see the types of wives that we do have. I mean, having a godly wife definitely makes all the difference. But I do feel I read some of this and I say, wow, that's really something to be able to do that. Um, what do you
I
think,
mean,
Vince? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, I appreciate what the books and I appreciate your lesson too, man, because I think a lot of the times, the key word I think we need to focus in on is self-sacrificing, because a lot of the world's definition of love is very conditional, like we already talked about.
Yeah.
That and I've heard people say too, oh, like I love them if they make me happy and stuff like that. But it's
Yeah.
like we gotta like we discuss, put effort in and do work to show our love, for our spouses and our partners, and we gotta uh, take a godly perspective on it to make that sacrifice. And I appreciate your illustration of Shallow Hal. That movie kind of did pop in my head too,
Yeah.
because I think sometimes people look too much at the exterior, and don't focus on the interior. But yeah, I think just the trap of falling into doing things for conditions, for that definition of love, is a flawed view, I feel. So I appreciate your lesson,
Yeah.
Javier.
Yeah, that's a great word too. Conditional. I think so many of us, uh, we just kind of we're programmed into this conditional thing of, well, if you don't do this, I'm not going to do this. And why should I do this if I'm not going to get anything out of this? And so yeah, I could definitely see where many of us, especially on a worldly type of view, fall into that. Um, but anybody else want to share anything, or anybody feel? Was anybody kind of just going, yeah, that's right, right, that's what we should be doing, and I got no problem with none of that. I don't have any hesitation to do it, and that's what I've done throughout my whole marriage. Anybody feel that they've done that through their whole marriage? Ruben, any thoughts from you? You look like you want to say something.
Yeah. I just I as you're talking, I was writing notes down, and every time I read a chapter here, I'm learning that my idea of love is not biblical love, and I need to work at matching biblical love in my life, not only in my life, but and as it pertains to my wife as well. And early on in marriage, pride, fear,
Yeah. Yeah.
bitterness kind of took control for a little bit. And I'm realizing now that, like you said, after you're reading this, you got to be a pushover. Well, I'm learning now that loving is not a weakness or a feminine characteristic, like the guy said in this book. And you know, showing love with this magnitude will just make things go a lot easier, and it'll lift my wife up rather than
Exactly. Yeah.
tear her down or make me bitter. You
Mhm.
know, and I was talking, and as I hear your lesson, thinking about a confidant of mine, and said that a perfect marriage is 110%. Is me giving 110%, no matter what. And sometimes I got to look at it that way. I
Yeah.
got to do for her without her even without expecting anything in return.
Yeah.
And but you said something about the way we grew up, and there were so many examples and so many things offered to me that I didn't take on because of my pride. And you get that kind of like macho feeling, and it's taken a long time to kind of get rid of that and just love. And I know now that when I do that, things just seem to go a lot better. So those are things that I wrote down as I'm hearing you speaking. That one big thing, oh, man, I got to be a pushover.
Yeah.
But
It's
that's okay. That's okay because, like I said, when I do these things, it's going to lift my wife up rather than cause any kind of conflict or strife.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely right. Yeah. That's kind of what I come away from it as well. You got to do these things, and that's going to cause a reaction in your spouse, I think. And the tough part is where the book talks about, well, it really doesn't matter what she does, or if she doesn't have a reaction or does, you got to keep doing those things for the glory of God. And yeah, I think those are tough pills to swallow, but I think that's right. Yeah. Um, well, does anybody else have anything to share on this topic?
Javier, maybe we can discuss more after we finish record, if you like.
Oh, sure. hmm do I stop the recording, or do you stop the recording?
Okay, let me stop the recording.
Yeah, you can stop it there.
Okay.